Well, hello everyone, and welcome along to our special webinar today. I'm Colin Dunn from Panalytics, delighted to welcome you to an interview with my good friend Glenn Hetzel. Welcome, Glenn. Good to have you on board here today.
Thanks, Colin. It's great to be with you today.
Excellent. So our topic today, as everyone joins into the webinar, is all around business development, and specifically developing a business development culture that will drive growth in your firm. So really, really important topic. And Glenn and I were chatting before we started the webinar about some of the topics that create real interest amongst accountants, and they tend to be in the area of pricing and marketing, but it really particularly around business development and sales. So good to see so many people registered today. Here's the format for our webinar. First of all, we're going to make this as interactive as we can. So those of you who are joining the webinar live, you're very welcome to ask questions as we go through, and Glenn and I will do our best to answer them as we go. We can't guarantee that we'll get to all of the questions. And by the way, thank you to those of you who've submitted questions in advance. We'll deal with those as we go as well. So to do that, you just find the questions box, the Q&A box in the Zoom panel, and just enter your question in, and that'll come straight through to us. Just to make sure that you're able to do that, if you don't mind, just go there now and just type in hi from wherever you are. So hi from New York, hi from Sydney, hi from Los Angeles, wherever you are today. That way we know that you can hear us, which is always a good thing. So go ahead and do that, and we'll just check that we have no problems there. We are recording the session as well. Some of you may be watching a recording of this session, and so, of course, you won't be able to interact with us live today, but thank you for joining us and listening to the recording. But those of you who are listening live, you'll get a recording after the session, and we encourage you to share that recording with your team and with colleagues and any other interested parties as well. So looks as though that people can see us. That's good. So hi, Tim. Tim's up in Portland. Tony's joining us from beautiful British Columbia. So yeah, lots and lots of people can hear us and see us, so that's wonderful. So, Glenn, let me turn this over to you. You are the star of today's show. So if you don't mind, to get us started here, just give us a little background on your firm. So you've had a long journey in this profession. So just give us a sense of where you've come from in terms of your professional career and where the firm is right now.
Okay, well, after graduating from University of Miami in 1977, I joined a large regional firm in the Miami area, and was with them for a few years, left them to join their largest client in the international containerized cargo trade, in which I traveled the Caribbean and pretty much all around the world for 5 years. The last year and a half, I had moved to California and commuted to work in Florida. And the company was sold. It was the beginning of the run of the mergers and acquisitions of the 80s and 90s. And so I wanted to stay in California, so I joined with a company that had 475 health clubs across the US as their controller and CFO. They were owned by a large public company, recently acquired, and after 2 years, they wanted to move the office to Chicago. I liked the warm climate and didn't really want to commute to Chicago from LA, and so had the opportunity to join a public company and trade on the NASDAQ market in the computer industry, and was there a couple of years. Had a great opportunity to go into defense contracting, work on the Star Wars Defense Initiative during the Reagan administration, traveled back and forth to DC quite frequently during that period. And once the wall came down in Berlin, that project got shelved, and I moved off to a company that was looking to take a cellular phone distributor company public, and worked with them until the Gulf War broke out in the early 1990s, 1992, I believe it was. At that point, going through all the churn of the mergers and acquisitions, I developed the entrepreneurial spirit and said, I don't want to keep doing this every 2 to 3 years, changing companies, building it up for the owners and not being vested in the retirement plans and not really reaping the benefits. So I started an accounting practice in 1992 and also started manufacturing business that same year. And, you know, at that time, there were a lot of accountants that were laid off, and I didn't know which one was going to go. So I kind of threw my hat into two rings and slowly built the accounting firm, sold the manufacturing business in 2004, and just focused from that point on the accounting firm and building it and growing it to where we are today. We have got 7 team members located here in Mission Viejo, California, and we're growing. We're between 30 and 40% year over year from last year, despite the COVID-19 coronavirus.
Terrific. So this is not the normal journey of a CPA, and how has that experience that you've had around the world in different industries, how's that helped you in terms of the way in which you work with your clients?
When I started the firm, you know, initially I did a little bit of direct marketing and advertising, and you know, picked up some individual clients, but I was really targeting business clients. And through the manufacturing business, which was servicing businesses, I was able to pick up a few good business clients, and they really didn't have any accounting, professional accounting staff. They were growing businesses, mostly service-based businesses, and they were just muddling their way through their accounting. And so I was able to provide them not only with professional accounting services, but also to act as a contract CFO, and having the business experience of being a CFO in a wide variety of industries, I could very easily consult with them and guide them in the path that they needed to reach their goals. And so it's kind of a natural progression for me to work with business clients, and from the experience being on the business side of accounting versus the public accounting practice side, I had a lot of experience to draw from.
That's fascinating. So the virtual CFO service is something that is talked about a lot in the profession today. And I think, you know, it's often a lot of talk, but not a lot of action in terms of people embracing it and delivering it to clients. What have you found that clients really value in terms of the input that you can provide?
I think you know, the best thing is being able to understand their numbers and understand what it's telling them. You know, very few people can, outside of the accounting profession, can read financial statements, and even a lot of bankers and financial advisors, you know, have a very elementary level in interpreting what a financial statement is telling them. And so being able to sit down with a business owner, you know, and look at key productivity indicators and develop those, and look at the financial statements and tell them the story that the financial statements are telling them in business language, not in accounting terms, and showing them, you know, what trends are happening when looking back at prior periods, looking at the current period, and helping them understand, you know, what decisions they need to make to keep moving their business forward and achieve their goals.
Right. And I want to come back to this idea of business training, business foundation training for clients in just a moment. But before I get there, and before I forget, you've got clients all over the world. So
we do.
So how does this happen? And oftentimes, you know, people tend to think, well, I'm located in Mission Viejo, so that's where my clients will be. But that's not the view you've taken, or the eventuality that's occurred. So tell me some more about that.
Well, having traveled the world, you know, when I was in the international containerized cargo industry, I got familiar with accounting in a lot of different countries, and also with tax issues in those countries that we were interacting with and serving. And so it was kind of natural for me to venture into that area. And out in the US, pretty much outside the big 8 or big 4 firms, there are very few firms that deal with international tax issues. And so it's a specialized area. And here in California, there's quite a few companies that have operations overseas. There's also investors that come from other countries, China, Italy, all over Europe, and Australia, New Zealand, that invest in companies here in the US and want to get into the market here in the US and market their products and services here. But they need somebody here that not only understands the US side, but also understands their own country and how the accounting is done. We've worked with a distribution company. The parent company was located in Germany. and they opened up U.S. operations, and we were very instrumental in handling all the U.S. accounting and helping them to integrate that into and consolidate into their German accounting system.
So here's a classic example then of thinking big and not being restricted by geography or perception of size. So you're running your firm, you're dealing with international companies with revenues of up to $100 million. So, and you should be very proud of what you've done there. So let's just come back to that point about business foundation training. So one thing that I think is really important in terms of advisory is being able to hang your hat on something and say, look, this is the way in which we work with clients. So just tell us some more about your process in terms of how you initially engage and then how you progress with the clients.
Okay, once we have a client on board, a business client, oftentimes we find that they really haven't had a lot of training in how their business entities to be set up, what's the best entity type to be, and maybe it makes sense to convert that to a different entity type. Also, how their accounting system is set up. Oftentimes, they're not, they just kind of fell into place when they were really small and started with something small and really outgrown what they were doing. And so we have a whole training program that we provide to our clients when they come on board, and that helps them to understand how to better process their transactions, to account for things correctly, to be able to move to online or cloud-based systems and utilize apps to minimize the work that they're doing manually and minimize the errors and make it more efficient for them. And then we look also at structurally what do they do and how best is that accounted for. There are a lot of times when they're missing a lot of deductions or missing a lot of opportunities on the revenue side because they're just narrowly focused and their tunnel vision is keeping them from seeing the possibilities.
So when you're engaging with a prospect, there are clearly various ways in which you could do that. One way is to say, we do tax, and so come and join us and we'll do that. But another way is to present that in a completely different way. And as you've just described there, to say the first thing we need to do is to ensure that you understand what's happening with your numbers and so on. What do you find the take up is with new clients? Do most of them say, yeah, we need that, let's get started there?
When we engage with a prospect, about 50% of the time or more, we're able to convert them to clients. Typically in the prospect phase, all of this is best generated through referral, and it's through your existing clients and your power partners through it could be clients, it could be bankers, financial advisors, attorneys, insurance brokers, mortgage brokers, that you engage with and keep in constant contact with, and you have to know who your target client is and what that profile is and define it pretty well. And then you talk to these people and you tell them, do you know anybody? And then you tell them the profile of what you're looking for. And that way they have something so that when they're sitting with one in their sphere of influence with somebody and they say something about a problem that they're struggling with in their business, the light goes off and they say, oh, I know somebody that knows something about that. Why don't you talk to Glenn? Or why don't you talk to Alan? And so then, a conversation will open up. And instead of trying to sell them, we listen to them and find out where's their area of pain, what are their problems, and then we tell them to go back to their advisors and ask them, do you have a solution for this problem? And when they go back to their accountant or their financial advisor or their estate planning attorney, and they say, no, we really don't do that. We only do this. We only prepare tax returns. If they go back to their accountant, and a lot of the small businesses, they only did compliance, and their professionals aren't set up to handle any more than that. And so, then they'll come back to us and say, well, no, they can't provide that. What do you guys do? And then we tell them, what we can offer them based upon what their their problems are that they need to focus on solving.
Perfect. So that Chris in Florida, a state you know well, of course.
Yes.
Chris asked exactly the question. You know, where do your best leads come from? And what I'm hearing you say there is you've got to build a referral network.
You do. That's where
Right.
you're not going to get it through direct marketing. You're not going to get it through advertising. You'll get very little through web presence, but putting content out there on the web and driving interested parties to that helps to build credibility.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So Grant in Perth in Western Australia was interested in sales conversion rates. And you mentioned, yeah, we're closing 1 and 2, which is pretty good effort. What are some other keys you've found to increase those conversion rates?
Well, the first thing we do is our client service coordinator and business manager understand very well the profile of our ideal client. We get probably 20 contacts a week, you know, some through internet, some through referrals. And when they contact the firm, they'll either run into either one of those 2 individuals, and they will screen them based upon our ideal client. If they're not an ideal client, then we refer them to somebody that we think would be a good match for them, another professional. And then if there's a possibility and they're not sure, you know, then Alan or I will engage with the client and we'll do a discovery meeting and see if they have the potential to be a good client, a good fit for our firm. So we're very selective in who we bring on.
And also very selective in who you will see personally as well. So
Yes.
Having that screening process in place, I think, is a very important part of of what you're doing. Would you agree with that?
I do. I agree very, very heartedly with that. Yeah. You have to be very diligent about this.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, let's with all of that in mind and the vast experience that you've had, how do you answer this question? So let's imagine you bump into a prospect, someone who's running a business, and they say, Glenn, what do you do? How do you answer that question?
I tell them that we're trusted advisors dedicated to building better businesses through proactive solutions that result in a path to success and peace of mind.
Right. So this is very different from I'm an accountant.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And so when you say that, which clearly just rattles off the tongue very easily because you've done it so many times, how do people respond?
Well, oftentimes it opens up to ask a lot more questions, because if you just tell them you're an accountant, okay, I know what an accountant does is a typical response, you know, to that. But when you say you're a trusted advisor and you know, you're building better businesses, you know, that piques their interest, and that you have proactive solutions, that's something that a lot of business owners that have problems are looking for. So, you know, in a very subtle way, you've communicated to them that you're a problem solver and you have capability of solving their problems, no matter what the scope of those problems might be. It might be they need an estate tax planning attorney. Well, we'll refer them out to a partner, and we'll probably get involved with that client at some point.
So major key right there in terms of business development is making yourself, if you will, an object of interest. So we're not just a normal accountant, and then engaging in a conversation where we start to really focus in on what people need, rather than trying to push a solution to them.
Precisely.
Excellent. Okay, think back, if you will, to when you first started working with Panalytics. So how did that occur, and what made you think, yeah, there's something here, and I should invest some time in this?
Well, I was at a critical place in my business life, and the firm had grown, and it was becoming a tremendous burden on me from the administrative side that was growing, and I really didn't have anybody handling administration. We just did the typical thing of hiring, you know, college graduates with accounting degrees to come in, be an intern, answer phones, and do some of the data entry work. And I'd grown up one senior accountant, Alan, who's now a manager with me. Alan decided in June of 2016 to leave the firm for a larger firm. He saw a better opportunity. And at that point, I lost my right-hand person. The burden of the work was just tremendous, and I could just see the overload. And we had 6 months earlier put in a practice development software, which I didn't have any time to really learn the ins and outs of because of the burden on my schedule. So I decided to go to this conference where they had all their technicians, and they had seminars all day long about the different components of the software. And I thought that'd be a great opportunity for me to learn. Well, I got there, and then the first morning at the lunch break, I met another CPA from New York, and he said, "Hey, I met this Australian guy that's putting on an all-day seminar tomorrow, and it's all about your practice development and how to run an accounting business." And I said, "Wow, that sounds pretty interesting." So I went in the morning and just skipped all of the practice management software because I felt it was so valuable. What he was telling me was how to run the business. And I was at a point where either I was going to decide to grow the firm, or I was going to scale it back down to what I could do as a sole practitioner and just continue on that way. And at that day was the pivot point where I decided I'm going to grow the firm. There's so many great tools here. I'm going to take advantage of this and go back and work on my firm. And so I knew right away that day. And the other co-founder of Panalytics, I connected with very well. And so I was very intrigued and really started to grasp onto the Panalytics model.
Excellent. So as you started to get involved there, one thing that we've spoken about is there's no silver bullet here, and before you can press the growth button, there are things that need to be fixed in the firm. So what were some of the first projects that you implemented when you first started working with us?
The first thing we had to do was to get our mission statement and get that focus defined clearly, because everything kind of flows from that point. And then the next thing was we needed to work on our workflow. We were really falling behind in getting work product out the door. We had a tremendous backlog. Also, we didn't have the right team members in the firm. Once I decided to move forward with the Panalytics model, I got a lot of resistance from the existing team members, and there was, over the next 2 years, complete turnover of every person in the firm.
Every person? Wow.
Every single person, had to go because they didn't see the future the same way that I did, and didn't have that same vision. And so if they're going in a different direction, they're going to pull you down.
So that's dramatic change.
Very dramatic.
You couldn't be more all in than that. But what an opportunity. So to essentially build from the ground up and design this thing as you want it to look. So having recognized some of those obstacles, what happened next in terms of the team that you built? So talk to us about the journey of building this team that you have now.
Well, we had a couple missteps, of mishires that caused a few setbacks, but the key was getting a business manager on staff that would handle all the HR functions, do the hiring, interviewing process, and then also manage the projects. Project management is very intense and important, as well as managing the human resources side. And then getting the client service coordinator position filled with the right person that had the right personality to interact well with our clients and be able to get the information in, get it into our digital libraries, and make sure that we had everything in place before we start working on a project. And then Diane, also our business manager, was responsible for making sure that we got the workflow implemented properly so that we could be efficient in utilizing our capacity and get the work product out the door in a more efficient and cost-effective manner, eliminating a lot of pickup and put down on the products.
Right. So Diane's clearly a very, very important person on the team. And lots and lots of things happening. Reminds me of a question we had about the plates all spinning at once, and how do we
Yes.
keep them spinning? So Claire in the United Kingdom asked that question: how do you keep all of the plates spinning and maintain the balance of supporting your clients' needs whilst focusing on growth?
Well, the key is to scheduling. Everything has to be scheduled. Your projects have to be scheduled. Your business development activities, marketing activities have to be scheduled, just as you're working on a project. So, you need to have all the right team members in place in order to move forward with that. And after we had spent a year working on workflow and getting the right team in place, I was able to bring Alan back on board, who had left in June of 16 back, and he joined us back in May of 19, and as a manager. And his main focus was business development after we got our client migrated mostly from desktop to cloud-based accounting systems, built standardized procedures for working with our business clients on the accounting and tax projects. And then the focus has been business development. And so Alan spends typically 3 to 4 hours every day on business development. I spend a little bit less because of some of the administrative tasks and the review work that I've got, but both of us work on business development, and it's a strategic thing that we do. It's on our calendar, and if you don't plan it and work on it a little bit every day, you're not going to achieve anything with it.
So with this idea of business development, is this something that comes natural to some people, or do you think it's a skill that can be acquired? How have you found you've approached that?
Well, selling is something that you need a skill for, but our marketing, our business development is more like fishing. And most fishermen that I know aren't great salespeople. Most of them do a lot of other types of things, but they're good at fishing. And it's how you approach the leads and the prospects, and cast your line out there with some bait on it. You're not trying to sell them a product or service. You're trying to pique their interest in what you have to offer by asking them good questions about pain areas or problems that they've identified in conversation.
So it's not so much about developing great sales techniques, but more about, let's think of it this way, firstly, raising awareness about what you can do in the firm, but then showing a genuine interest in the client's business and asking lots of questions. Would that be a good summary?
I think so. You have to have also to present to the client, a good product menu for the types of services that you're going to give them. It's just like when you go into a restaurant, you don't want to be sold on a particular menu item. You want to have a menu and make a choice. And when you give clients a choice, oftentimes they'll choose something higher than what you might think that they would go for as far as a package of services. And so it's really important to have your product offering defined, what the services are that are included in, whether it be tax compliance or business consulting, business advisory. You need to have what is specifically included in that. Just like on a menu, you see, a menu item, and then it'll tell you all the things that are in that on that plate that's going to come to you. You need to have all those services defined, and you have to do that really before you start putting it out there, so that when you get to that point where the client comes back to you and say, okay, well, I'm interested in finding out a little bit more. What do you have to offer? Now you can pull out your menu of services.
So that becomes a strategic issue in terms of defining the expertise that you have in your firm. And
yes,
some firms choose to focus on industry niche, whereas I think what you're doing is saying, no, we work with a wide range of industries, but here are the services that we can take to those industries. Is that fair?
That's fair, yes.
Yeah, okay, great. So mindset's really important, of course, in business. And a lot of small firms stay very small because they believe that the status quo is what will always be. Whereas you've taken the view, you've already told us that you had 100% turnover on your team. How do you develop the mindset to enable you to do that and say, look, this isn't working properly. I'm going to essentially start again and attract great quality people to my small business here?
I think you always have to be, out there looking for people. We've always got an ad running. You also have to network with other professionals. That there may be a change going on in their firm. Maybe there's a split of partners, and you may have the opportunity to pick up somebody, or maybe there's a firm where one of the partners is retiring and his team members are suddenly available. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can find the right people, but it's not, you can't just go out and find them like you can go out and find a grocery item or an item at one of the big box stores or a clothing item. It's not like that. You have to constantly be searching and seeing who's out there, who's available. And when somebody good comes along, then you have to open a discussion with them and start that process. And so we're always looking for the right people. And we've got a great team right now, but we're always looking now, even as we grow, because we know we're going to have to add more to the team.
Right. So what impact has this made on the sort of work that you're doing personally? Because, many partners and owners say, this sounds great, but I'm just too busy doing all of the work that has to be done. So what's the impact been on that?
Well, I was too busy in June of 16. I was so busy that for 6 months, I couldn't even learn how to really implement other than what my team members had done with the practice management software, to where it really was giving me the value that I intended for it. And I really had to change that mindset and look at who can I hire and what can I delegate off of my plate? What is it in the firm that I don't need to do that somebody else could do? And then find those things and find somebody that can do that and hire them and put them in that, task them with those responsibilities.
Right. So you're getting the right people doing the right things, which enables you to focus on working with a small number of the larger clients.
Correct. Yeah, I focus really on our top 5 clients. I do review compliance work on most clients at this point, but I don't do the work on anything other than the top 5. And those are, the work I do there is more very high level consulting work, not data processing work.
Fantastic. Excellent. So you mentioned in your introduction that you're on target for revenue growth, around about 40% this year. So
that's correct.
Congratulations. And you will hit that. What have been the keys to unlocking that growth?
The keys are really, found in networking with your client base, networking with your power partners, those professionals that have the capability to refer you to good clients, and referring them clients. Is that's why I say, when we talk to clients, maybe somebody we meet in an elevator might need a trust attorney. And so, we'll refer them to the trust attorney. Well, the trust attorney is going to maybe refer them to another, to a financial advisor, or maybe the trust attorney will tell them, well, you really don't have the advice in that part of your portfolio. You need to talk to Glenn and find out who they would recommend you work with. And so then it comes back, and eventually the client comes back to us and says, well, what can you do for us? You've done a lot for us with these other partners and referring us. What can you do for us? And so that a lot of times it comes roundabout way. Sometimes it comes directly, where somebody's got an issue. They lost their controller, walked out on them, and they need someone to help, and they're willing to work on a contract basis and have a team of professionals working with them in their accounting department versus just one person. And so we've had several of those types of situations come up over the past few months.
Right. So you mentioned a few things there. So networking has clearly been very, very important to your firm and the development that you've seen. You've talked about content, so that's the credibility piece, so making sure that people are aware of what you can do. How do you manage opportunities as they come in? Are you using any tools to help you do that?
Yeah, we basically we use the sales pipeline that Panalytics offers. So when we have a lead that's screened by our CSE or business manager and passes through that screening as a potential ideal client, it goes into the sales pipeline, and then we track our progress with that prospect through that tool. And that's how we're able to stay on top of where we're at with each prospect. Because oftentimes, if it's a face-to-face meeting, we can close the client in 2, maybe 3 meetings. It's usually 3 or 4 if we're doing it through video like this. It takes a little bit longer to build that credibility. You don't get that in-person, rapport as quickly through video.
Right. Yeah. So this is a process, and
It is.
and a really important point there that I just want to make sure that people don't skip over is, if you have a first meeting and you don't sign the client up, that doesn't mean it's a no.
That's right.
And so
oftentimes they need to interact with you 2, 3, 4. Sometimes it's via email, it's via other things that but anywhere from 2 to 4 meetings where you're actually meeting with them versus just communicating through email or phone call is important to and sometimes it takes as little as a week. Sometimes it takes a month or 2 months to close a client. The process to get the referrals, start that pipeline of referrals coming from your referral sources. That's another layer that's all in front of that, and that can take 6 months to develop with those professionals. And so I started Alan working with different groups back in August of last year, and it really started to pay off in February, March, and April this year, where we're seeing as many as 10 good quality referrals each week, and we're meeting with those on a weekly basis.
Wow, so 10 referrals a week. So this is clearly why you have such growth in the firm. But how do you hold yourself accountable so that the whole team can keep their eye on the ball here and make sure that you're following up and closing all of these leads?
Well, our business manager stays on top of where we're at with the sales pipeline. The internal leads for our clients, we've trained our team members that are working on the projects to identify opportunities so that Alan and I can, when we interact with the client in delivery of the work product, then we can talk to the client about those potential opportunities, and that brings a lot of conversations and sales of additional services to our existing client base. So it's not just adding new clients, it's adding services to existing clients. So the team works on the existing clients. Alan and I focus not only on the existing clients, but also on the the new clients.
And so you mentioned earlier that taking on the right sort of clients is important, and that you've got a process in place to essentially vet prospects to make sure they fit that target client criteria. Just share with us, if you don't mind, some of those target client attributes. What are you looking for in a good client?
Well, typically, we're looking for a client that probably the first thing is, are they interested in growing their business? Because if they're not, it's a disqualifier. If their business has matured and they're plateaued, and unless they're looking for an exit strategy and we can help them with that, then they're probably not a candidate for us. They need to be. We like to have at least $1 million in revenue as an ideal client, as a starting point. 3 to 5 million is a real sweet spot to start with. It's easy to get into that because they've typically outgrown the account that they started with when they the first few years of the business. They've at this point outgrown that accounting firm, and so that's a real sweet spot for us, where we have offerings of products and services that their current accountants don't. So that's been real helpful. We get a lot of that through some key banking relationships, where those clients are looking to access capital, whether they're going to their banker for credit line or equipment financing, or even looking for some other types of equity financing, venture capital type stuff. And we interact with some of those people at some of the high levels, and that brings us a lot of leads right there. And those are companies that are looking to grow, and that's one of the key attributes. Another is if they have a lot of rental properties, that's another area we can help them out with.
Perfect. That's terrific, Glenn. So here we are. Um, those of you who are watching a recording of the webinar, June 2020. It's been a strange year to say the least, with the COVID crisis. That's been quite a strain for accountants around the world. So what have you and the team done to keep motivated and keep that momentum going this year?
Well, the shutdown was intended to flatten the curve on the coronavirus cases. Also, with the extension here in the U.S. From April 15th to July 15th, it flattened the curve on tax season for us. And we no longer had that crunch of the 3 weeks prior to April 15th, where we were working an enormous number of hours. We scaled back the team hours to minimal overtime so that everybody could stay well and healthy and not run their immune systems down. And then as the programs for federal loans to help the small businesses came available, we got very involved with many of our clients in helping them obtain the Paycheck Protection Program loans, as well as some of them the EIDL, the Economic Income Disaster Loans. And so we were able to really help a lot of our clients in navigating their path forward through the shutdown. And being able to maintain a viable business structure, looking at what can they do. We've had some clients, we've had them shift a little bit of what they do to a new market and be able to remain afloat financially through this time by just making some minor shifts in what they do. Similar to, when the government asked Ford to produce ventilators instead of automobiles. We had some of one of our clients, we tasked them to make the partitions and acrylic panels and hand sanitizer stations and other things that they could do in their manufacturing facility just by shifting the type of products that they build.
Perfect. So you've just continued to take the view that we're a trusted advisor, we're in partnership with our clients here, and we're going to work alongside them to help them get through this.
Absolutely.
Kirk's up in Vancouver in British Columbia. He asked the question, did you need to reduce the types and scope of compliance services that you previously provided so that you could offer more advisory services?
No, we didn't reduce the scope or the size. We did on the low end, the less profitable, lower dollar revenue clients. A lot of them this year, we either priced them out or we referred them to another firm if they didn't want to follow the procedures that we had. We had on the tax compliance, we had everybody, unless they were a business client that had a business account with us, on the personal side, pay up front. Even the businesses that didn't do monthly, they paid up front for their compliance work. And that helped to weed out a lot of the ones that were not so profitable. And we concentrated on the ones that were profitable and on the new business clients that we're bringing in.
Great answer, thank you. So Glenn, I first met you in Australia on one of your regular summer visits to your second home.
January
Bondi.
17, if I'm correct.
Right.
Fortitude Valley there.
Yes, exactly, yeah. So how do you manage to take a month away from the firm every year so that you can enjoy the summer in Sydney? And how important is that work-life balance to you?
Well, it's very important. One of the things that I found is that in the early days of, when I just had tax season help coming in, but was really a sole practitioner, that it was nearly impossible to get away for any length of time. And I'd find that during the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays, when I was visiting family, and at that time they lived in Florida, and that was the only time I could do my continuing education and get away. And I still had to field phone calls, and I couldn't just put the office phone on the message machine at that time, and deal with it when I got back. I had to keep in touch with my business clients, and so I'd forward it to my cell phone and basically took the business to Florida with me and took my laptop with me and accessed my email from there. And I thought, well, when I started going to New Zealand in 2000 and started going down in various different times during the year, I was usually there about 3 or 4 times a year for a week or two at a time, and would take my cell phone with me and my laptop with me, and I was able to work and do some things remotely. Not everything as I can today, but with the technology, you can, as long as I'm in a period where I don't have to do a lot of face-to-face with clients, I can pretty much take the work with me. And I found that to be a great way. In Australia is wonderful because, it's the season I like in January, which is, when most businesses right after the beginning of the year, they're busy closing their books. They're not, there's not a lot of interaction at the high level with me. My team is working on helping them with closing and any reconciliation issues they have with their payroll tax compliance, but they're not ready for, for my level services at that point. So we've gotten all the tax planning done in December and November. We're past all of that. We're past all the extension filing deadlines that happen in October. So, it's a quieter month that I can work remotely. And with the large 5 clients, I can work remotely with them from Australia and access the information I need to keep their closings moving forward and interact with their team members at their offices. And so also with the time difference, it's nice because I can get up early, and by 10:30, their day is pretty much over with 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. And then I can go off and I don't have to worry about the phone ringing the rest of the day. And I can just concentrate on leisure activities and enjoy my day without the constant interruptions. I remember one time back in, I think 2007, I was in Rwanda on a mission trip, and one of my clients, a dental practice, had an urgent question. They called me. It was 4:30 in the afternoon here in California, 1:30 in the morning there, and it rang and woke me up in my hotel room. And they thought it was 4:30, so they thought I was just. They said, couldn't believe I was in Africa. They said, it sounds like I'm in the next room. And back then, people didn't do that in 2007. There weren't that many people, taking their office with them across the globe. And I found it worked quite well. So, it's been something I planned to do just so that I could get that time. And it's the calm before the storm of tax season. And it's a great time for me to refresh myself and be ready to meet, come back with a refreshed attitude and ready to meet the new challenges.
Perfect. Let's hope the borders are open again soon so that you can make that trip again in January.
I sure do. I'm planning on it.
Yeah, right. Now, a few people have just asked how can they get involved with Penlytics and some of the key areas of focus. So let me just take a little bit of time to walk through that very, very quickly. And then I've got a few final questions for you, Glenn, if that's okay. So
sure.
First up, if you think about one of the big issues here, what's the problem? So the problem that a lot of accountants tend to have is that lead generation is not easy. And oftentimes it's shelved because as accountants, we feel, well, we're not good at marketing. How could we possibly do that? Then there's the issue of getting the right leads. So that can be even harder. And then when you do start to get some leads, sometimes they're not converted to sales because of either slow or indecisive responses. And by the way, that can be on both ends. So at the end of the accountant or at the end of the prospect or client as well. So what we're putting together here for you is a 90-day lead generation program. So with that in mind, what's the solution? Well, Glenn's mentioned it a few times during the webinar today, and it starts with the distribution of engaging branded content that's sensitive to your clients and the environment that you're operating in and the times as well. So content in the COVID environment has been quite different from content in a growth environment or a booming economy. And that content also should be suited to the goals and expertise and target clients of your firm. And Glenn, you talked about the expertise that you've developed there and how you've packaged that together in different sorts of services so that you can go to a broad range of clients who are your target clients and offer those. So what does that look like? Well, here's an example of an article, and notice the title here. So the title in this case, it's about resilience. So this is about shifting the focus from clients. We've survived now. How do we become a resilient business going forward? And one of the keys in content is to enable clients to interact with you. So when someone reads an article, which you might publish on your website, on your blog, through a newsletter, on social media, is then to be able to click through and engage with perhaps a guide. So if I'm a business owner, how does this topic relate to me. So to be able to work through a guide and figure out what does this content apply in this area or this area. In this case, we're looking at how's the market changed here for a potential clients that you're working with. But that's fine. So having that sort of interaction online is a good thing. But then the next step should be a call to action. So enabling the client to do something to work towards a commercial relationship with you. So here's an example of that, an article about cash flow management, which could be quite relevant for a lot of clients right now. And down the bottom here, book your cash flow planning meeting. So click here to do that. Now, a lot of accountants have started to do that, but what tends to happen is it'll just create an email and say, contact me about cash flow. But wouldn't it be nice if we went a step further than that and had an effective follow-up process when clients respond, so that you can instantly generate a proposal with terms and conditions and highlight pricing and allow the client to have an opportunity to ask some questions along the way. And so that's the proposal tool that we're looking at here. Could be generated very, very quickly and then sent out to clients where they see the title that they've expressed interest in here, and then some services that you can offer. And so these are examples. Of course, you can customize this for your particular expertise and target towards any industry expertise that you might have as well. So in this case, let's talk about a strategy session, a cash flow planning session. You can see the purpose of each, what it includes, and the benefits to the clients. And then what people want to know, of course, is what does this cost me? And so on the same proposal here, instantly we can see, well, here are the fees. This one happens to be in Australian dollars. There are people joining us today from all around the world. Of course, it would be in your local currency. And clients can choose to add on additional services if they wish to do that. So this provides an online interaction to close that loop, if you will, with clients. And not all are going to sign up immediately. And Glenn, as you said, some will just say, give me some more information. And right there on the document, they can ask you questions, and then you can set up a meeting or a Zoom call like this to move that forward. So if this is interesting for any of you, and I hope it is, just type leads in the question box, the Q&A box, and we'll get some more information out to you. And interestingly, what you'll see is a document just like the one that I've shown you here. So you'll get a good sense as to what that'll look like. But in your case, what we're offering you is a strategy session up front, because that's important. So what approach is going to work for your firm? Your firms are all very, very different. So what are your goals? What expertise do you have? And what target clients are you focused on? And then we'll help you distribute content twice monthly. And that'll be business content that's aimed at generating awareness and engagement, two words that Glenn and I have mentioned several times on the webinar today. So one question you might have here is, well, what does that cost? So we're interested in a long-term relationship here. So we're pricing this at a very affordable price point. This is $150 a month. There's no long-term contract here. It's a 3-month commitment. And as part of that, you get access to technology. So that's good. So you're able to leverage existing technology. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here. You get access to content that sits within our library, so we don't have to write that from scratch. You get support to get this set up and to help you execute the program, so you don't need to worry about having to do everything on your own as well. And so again, if this is of interest, just type leads into the Q&A box, and we'll be back in touch with you and let you know how you can move forward with that particular offer. So thank you for thinking about that one. Glenn, let's just deal with a couple of final questions. So Tom's in California, like you are. He asked the question, do you have a minimum fee for tax preparation work?
For typically for individuals, we won't touch anything under $700 is where we're at on that. For business clients, it's probably $1,500, $1,800 and up, you know, for the business tax compliance.
Right. And then a follow-up question from Tom is, with your package services, your advisory services, do you set that up so people can pay you in monthly installments, or is it all up front? How do you do that?
Okay, we've got a couple different ways. You know, we typically will offer them 3 choices: the basic choice, a standard choice, and a premium or platinum level choice. And the differences is what we'll do throughout the year in those. And probably, basic is just preparing the return. There's nothing else. You don't get anything else with it. The standard, you get a meeting to explain it and give you some thoughts and some things you might want to consider doing to improve your tax position, and also helping you with throughout the year with maybe adjusting your estimate vouchers. The platinum, we not only do all that, but we remind you to make your estimated payments. We answer any letters that you might get from the tax authorities and so forth. And those are priced very differently. The platinum may be as much as 3 times what the basic is, 3 or 4 times. The standard is usually at least twice. And a lot of the clients that we thought would only come for the basic, because we've shown them the standard of the platinum, will at least consider, choose the standard. The other thing that we do is we offer them 2 different prices. We have a price at the top that they can pay at the time the service is complete, but before we hand them the work product. Then we have a 10% reduction or a 5% reduction. If they pay everything up front, it's a 10% reduction. If it's in 2 payments, half up front and half at the time of delivery, then it's a 5% reduction. And so that's the way we offer it to them. Most will take the 10% reduction and pay us everything up front.
Beautiful. Love it. Thank you. Glenn, I have one final question for you, and thank you so much for being very gracious with your time this morning. I know everyone's got an enormous amount of value from the words of wisdom you've had to share. So what final words of advice would you give to our listeners today?
I would say that, we've been talking about the technological disruption coming to our industry. It's here, but not only that, but COVID-19 also did a physical disruption to many businesses and their offices, and a lot more people are working remotely today because of the crisis that we're in. And one of the things that strategically we can do is help clients to put into place systems that will work for them in a remote work situation, moving their accounting systems to the cloud, putting apps in place. And these are all projects that we can offer to clients. And the millennials are very interested in, can I run my accounting system from my tablet or from my phone? The more mature clients, want to run it from their laptop or their desktop, but they want to be able to do it from home or from where, if they travel, if they're in sales and they're traveling, they want to do it from their hotel room at night. And so, we need to be implementing those systems, and those are great opportunities with our existing client base to create new work for our firms. It's also a great way to attract new clients, because there are a lot of firms that aren't going to offer those services and products to their firms. And that's where we're finding a lot of opportunity these days.
Perfect. Great advice. Glenn, thank you so much for joining us today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's wonderful to just hear again of the journey that you've taken, and looking forward to continued success for your firm. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me, Colin. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Excellent. And thank you all, everyone, for joining us and taking time out of your busy schedules. That's much appreciated as well. Jono will just run a very quick poll, which we'd appreciate if you answer, just to give us a sense of the value that you got from this webinar. But please join us again next month for our webinars, and we look forward to interacting with you again. And remember, if you'd like to start on the journey that Glenn's described here, just type leads into that question box and we'll reach out and be in touch and let you know how to move forward with that. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye for now.